Hello and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CPL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe and
I'm Mike Rice.
And today we are talking about match week 10 in the CPL. We're already 10 match weeks in. Soon we're going to be halfway through already. How time is flying, but thankfully every weekend there seems to be a good amount of action, and like the CPL tends to deliver, quite a bit of controversy. And we are going to talk about some controversy in this episode. We're going to save it for a little bit later in the episode to make sure that we get some good retention, but also to talk about some of the games that happened just recently, since we are recording this on the Monday after the weekend. So we're going to be talking about Forge's game against Halifax first, Cavalry, and then we'll go into the big ones that we want to talk about. But before we dive into all of the games, remember to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, as well as finding us on YouTube under the same name to see the visual side of the podcast. But like I mentioned, Mike, we're going to start with the Forge game. Now, this one was a big game because obviously you have Halifax, who are chasing Ottawa at the top of the table, but are also being chased themselves by some other teams, including Forge, who they're playing, and Cavalry. Now, a big thing with Halifax in their current form is they wanted to go to Forge for the first time and get a win, because they haven't yet to do that in their history. They were looking to kind of maybe upset the balance, make some history themselves. But alas, that is not what they were treated to. And instead, they were treating to the Massunda show.
Yes.
As he spearheaded Forge to a 2-1 victory. And I think we'll have a lot to talk about with Massunda. I feel like we're going to be raving about him for quite a little bit. So maybe let's talk about Halifax first. What did you make of Halifax in this match? Because I don't think that they played particularly poorly. I just feel like they weren't prepared for what Massunda was going to bring, and then they weren't able to really hurt Forge in the way that maybe they had planned to before the game.
Yeah, this one was really obviously coming off that defeat to York last on the CPL on tour. This was like a really big one for Halifax. We're finding out like where they're at. Like, okay, like can you keep this momentum? Can you do something big and continue getting back on the wagon, getting back in such a difficult place that they found going into Hamilton, and not being able to do it again. I don't think, I agree they didn't play particularly bad, but there just seemed to be a bit more sloppiness about them, a little bit slower than Forge at times. Players coming back. I know they mentioned, Mekadesh had a really difficult time. But know that it was obviously mentioned, like Diogo Coimbra is like gaining fitness to be able to start again, and so there's players coming into the team that way, and a few little changes here and there. But yeah, just looks like there's something about them. Like, you want them to go, okay, right, let's win, let's continue fighting at the top of the table and prove that we're going to be like this big team, to like a force to be reckoned with for the rest of the year. But then they go there and they just have that sort of little brother feel to it again, where it's just like, oh, I don't know if we can beat them, they're too strong.
Yeah, and it does feel like they've struggled to really create like big chances. Where early in the season I felt like they were doing well to create these high quality chances to score goals, and it's because of the way that they've been able to have that kind of interplay in their midfield, the players that they've brought in. That's what Patrice Geyser's been able to really elevate in the squad, is the way that they transition, the way that they go through the motions to be able to attack both in the wide areas and in the central channels and create these really good chances. But it didn't really feel like we saw much of that, obviously, in the CPL on tour game, and also in this one. It wasn't until probably maybe the 60th minute where we started to see Halifax really get into the box and look a bit more dangerous. they did do relatively well, aside from Massunda, to quell Forge's attack. In the box, especially, we know how great Halifax has been defensively for the most part in these matches. And at the start of the season, and you have TMG, who has been one of the standout players.
Really found a stride straight in, didn't he? Didn't he?
Exactly.
Settled in really quick.
Exactly, and like Adam Perlman as well. I feel like both of them have been doing really well. And with Provo and Johnston, like showing up in the early stages, I think Halifax have the materials, obviously, to be competing where they have been competing. Well, we always talk about consistency. I feel like the consistency for Halifax is in when they're facing these tougher teams. Forge, York on their day are a very tough side, and we'll talk about York, later this episode. Still performing well, maybe not getting the result, but still performing well. You have to be able to kind of adjust a bit in the way that you play. And if you get stunted in the way that you like to attack, then you got to figure out different ways and how to attack to still be able to hurt them. Didn't feel like Halifax were really able to do that until later on, once they made some substitutions, once they started to bring different players on. Bahambula obviously got the goal, but also he was very lively. Sean Rea as well. It's about, finding that balance. And I think Halifax found that balance just too little too late. And had it been earlier in the match, especially they started to threaten before Brian Wright scored the 2-0. Had they found out a little bit earlier and were able to score before Brian Wright scored that goal, it could have obviously been a very different game. But I don't see anything from this match necessarily that makes me worry about Halifax. Is just unfortunate because now, if you look at the table, 3 teams are tied on 17 points, 4 points behind Atlético Ottawa, Cavalry, Halifax, and Forge. The issue for Halifax is that both Forge and Cavalry have played a game less. So if they both win their game in hand, and I don't believe it's against each other, so I believe both of them can win their game in hand, then they would obviously be on 20 points, 3 points ahead of Halifax, who would then drop down to 4th from their current position in 3rd. I don't think, again, it's anything to be quite concerned about. It's just, Forge at home are a very tough team, and we've seen many, many, many times that if you don't take your chances against Forge, Forge will take your chances against you. But yeah, I think just a couple of, minor lessons to be learned from Halifax from this match, but I still expect him to come back strong in the next one.
Yeah, they're going to need to think about how they deal with it. It's like you say, it's not poor old Halifax only on 17 points. Like they probably want to be playing as well as they are at times. It's just going to be they're going to have to keep going and keep working out how to finally get something over these big teams, and especially next time they're in Hamilton.
Very true. Luckily for them, the next 7 matches, 5 of them are at home, and we know how good Halifax is at home. The next match is against Cavalry, so another team that because of the game in hand, you want to beat them to be able to get that advantage over them. And then they face Vancouver and Valour, so they're, depending on the situations and the trends that seem to be going on, might be able to get some good points there at home. But yeah, for now, it looks like they're going to have to be hoping for other teams to come to their rescue to maintain their position as closest competitors to Ottawa. But now let's talk about Forge. And I mean, there are a couple of players that we can talk about, but let's talk about Massunda, because wow, what an impact this 19-year-old has had in this Forge side. It's already making me think about Kwasi Poku last season, the kind of big impact that he has, and just the way that he plays is so entertaining. He's got that X factor about him, where you can see that as soon as he squares up against the defender is already starting to kind of shake in their boots a bit, because he can just, his change of direction, his agility is so good. and his quick feet to be able to push the ball away or drag it back. It makes it such a conundrum to defend. And in this game as well, you see the way that he plays. The goal was good, obviously.
Yeah,
Really good volleyed finish. But it was the assist for me that was, the best action of the match for me from him, because the way he just sold, I think it was Timoteo, and then crossed that inch perfect a ball into the box for Brian Wright to head home. That's just wow. That's where you can see talent on display, and the fact that he's only 19, and the fact that we really didn't see him until 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
When
I mean,
he scored the
debuted
winner
this
against
month, wasn't
Pacific.
it? Last month.
Yeah,
So,
it's incredible how much he's been taking the CPL by storm in such a short amount of time.
yeah, and I mean on that assist, like it was fantastic. He goes to beat, I think it was Timoteo. Like it beat. He also just stops and keeps the ball, works out what he's doing, and then he makes the move to pick out Brian Wright. It's not like he's just running and throwing in crosses. It's not like it's just wide open. He's taking his time and he's being careful and he knows what he's doing. Like if he's making the right decisions, like if I go through there, then chances are it's not going to happen. I'll take it back. I'll weigh up my options and do something else. Like it's really mature play from someone who's only played a few minutes. And every game he's involved in a goal. Like so far, he's absolutely flying. Really, really exciting to watch, and that's what we want as neutrals. You want to find all these players coming on that are just going to entertain, and the way he's going, and the fact he just doesn't let off at any moment in the game. You just know every time he's on the pitch, you're going to be entertained at some point.
Yeah, and the thing that makes him so impressive as well is that obviously he's got technical ability. No one can deny that, the way that he plays on the ball. But it's off the ball as well, that if you really look, he's just so relentless in the way that he plays. Obviously Forge are a team that like to press high and to set traps for opposition players to lose the ball. But because he has the speed, because he's young, he's got that relentless energy. He's able to close down so quickly, and that's how he got his goal. I mean, Wesley Timoteo chested it, didn't see anybody. I guess he didn't scan or whatever, but he didn't feel like he was threatened. And in a second, Massunda was there taking the ball off of them and then scoring. It was literally a second, and he was there, and he was already on the attack. That's how incredible his athletic ability is, but it's also his determination, his work rate. I think he led Forge in this match with the most tackles won and the most duels won. And for a winger, an attacking winger, to have that shows his determination to be defensively strong as well as obviously attacking strong. And if he continues in this trend, if he's able to obviously get more minutes, he is benefiting from the fact that Mpoma is suspended and David Choinière is still not fit. Borges is still not fit. I mean, it's a similar thing with Kwasi Poku, where there was these problems, and the young player stepped up and took this opportunity by the scruff of the neck and made it his own. That's why I think of Kwasi Poku as well. It's like, I do think if Massunda continues this, and Palma, Choinière, Borges, they might find their spot being taken by this 19-year-old. Because if he continues like this, who knows how long Bobby's going to be able to keep him under his wing. We've already seen what happened with Kwasi Poku last season. Is that something that can happen to Massunda this season? If he continues like this, it's a small sample size, but if he continues like this, I don't see why not.
No, definitely. And I think, like you say, with Poku, he made himself undroppable, and Massunda's when he watched that last year and gone, well, now he's getting his chance and it's going well. He's just like, keep going, and how can they be dropped? And you've got Nana Mpoma, who's wildly inconsistent with his final ball. If he's playing well, there's a position there that he can take, and Choinière and Borges, if they can't keep themselves fit, it's gonna he could well really benefit from what's obviously what's happened to these players.
Yeah, and I mean, again, that's a story that I think many fans, neutral fans, would love, obviously. I'm sure some people would love it to happen somewhere else in Forge than the team that always seems to be winning. But I mean, Forge are good at what they do. Not only are they good at winning, but they're good at developing talent. We've seen them many times, especially attacking talent. We've seen them develop attacking talent after attacking talent. You gotta remember Wubin Spasius, even before Kwasipoku, then obviously Kwasipoku. They're just really good at developing these kinds of players and finding that balance between, you know, these young bucks and the more experienced, the more veteran, you know, heads, these players that can step in and mentor them. And I think when you have players like Kyle Becker, when you have players like, I mean, Tristan Borges, I guess, can count that now because he's been playing for so long in this league. David Chouanier, you know, you have these role models. It's easier for them to be able to fit into these teams and perform. And another player that I think we should talk about is Ashinori Jansson. Because even though he didn't steal the headlines, he did have a really solid performance in this game. And what was interesting is that usually what we've been seeing lately is Ashinori Jansson play in midfield for the injured Hojabrapur because he's been injured for the last little while. But Hojabrapur actually started today. But instead of putting Ashinori Jansson at center back, which is what he usually does when Hojabrapur is playing, he actually was part of the midfield and he had a little bit more attacking responsibility for the first 2/3 of the match. And I did feel like it wasn't foreign territory for him. It seemed like he actually slotted in really well. It goes to show his versatility, but also goes to show, I think, for me that, you know, he's with a player like him who's been in the league for so long, who has played at Forge for so long and understands the system. You can just kind of put him anywhere, and I think he'd do a job. And the midfield of Hojabrapur and Ashinori Jansson and Becker really did work for the, you know, until Becker got taken off. I think that adds another fold to what Bobby can do with his midfield and the talent that he has there. And you still got to, you know, remember that you have Noah Jensen on the bench as well. You know, I feel like you have different options, and I think Bobby is probably quite content with the fact that he can mix and match and probably get different results from the midfield setup.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I thought this one we might differ a little bit on it because I think his performances are that he did well in the midfield. I do agree with that. I just think he would play. I can see it happening against a team like Halifax or a team like Ottawa and Cavalry when you're wanting to shore up the midfield. But I just, for me personally, and maybe a lot of people will disagree with me, I don't think he was particularly comfortable when he got into the final third. If he was okay, if he was moving the ball across and sideways, but he did break into the box, and he wasn't shying away from it, but it didn't look completely comfortable. There was a cutback which threw him, but he wasn't sure, and then left it for someone else, and it all went away. I just think it does make you a little bit too defensive to a degree if you're playing against a team where you're expecting to, like, where you should be winning. If you're looking at, you go to some of the bottom three teams, if he's playing alongside Hojabrapur in the midfield, it just feels like a bit of a waste. To me, you've got, like you mentioned, Noah Jensen, players like, I mean, Kadeem Kane, when Chouanier's back and Borges, you'd have them and just have the one defensive midfielder. But again, I mean, it's a nice headache that Bobby's got of, like, if you put Shinoda Johnson back, who you dropping out of the defense, Nimic or Walabi Balewa, who are both playing very well. So yeah, it's I completely get the juggling act he's got of keeping players happy, fit, like up to match fitness. Like it's a tough job, and that's why keeping them all happy is going to be something that's going to take a lot of moving around. And I do agree, like, he can fit into that midfield. I prefer him as a centre back personally. I think he's much better there. But you've got that option with him, I guess. Yeah, but I think I would be really surprised if he played alongside Hojabrapur against Pacific, Valour, Vancouver.
That's true. Yeah, I think he is kind of as someone that maybe if you're worried about wide overloads, having him
Mm,
there and kind of forming maybe more of like a double pivot with Becker taking more
mm,
of the sole attacking midfielder role and having one of them to be able to cover wide,
yeah,
maybe there that's and that might have been one of the reasons why he did play in this
yeah,
match kind of like that, because Halifax love to overload the wide areas, especially in their three back system. But I do agree, yeah, he should have scored very early on. Um, he's still needing to sharpen some of the more attacking instances. He's not going to be an overnight Frank Lampard crashing into the box
yeah,
scoring these goals. But I did like him as an 8, and what I liked is that even though he's a big guy, and I see him more as like a not necessarily a destroyer, but like a more physical player. He's quite, deft
mm,
on the ball, and he knows how to work not only the ball but the players. He won, I think, the most fouls in the match with like 6 fouls throughout the match, which you don't expect from a player of his stature, of his build,
yeah,
to be able to know how to draw fouls as much as he did. But yeah, I think he was a player that did impress me. Uh, I do agree that, yeah, I think if you're going in for the kill, if you're planning to dominate teams like the bottom half teams, you probably wouldn't have the double pivot. Probably stunts you a bit too much attacking wise. Likely you'd put I know a Jensen there, or maybe you drop if once Tristan Borges is fit, maybe you drop a Tristan Borges into that position as an attacking midfielder alongside Kyle Becker.
yeah.
Yeah, I could see that situation be better for Forge. But hey, it's never bad to have options. It's
No,
never bad to have options and different possibilities with a midfield, especially as talented as a midfield that Forge have, um, and the options they have off the bench. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple more experiments like this in the future from Bobby. But for now, let's move on to the second match and that we're going to talk about, which is Cavalry against York. Now, this one was a very interesting match, and I was very excited to talk about this one because Cavalry came out 2-1 winners against York. But it did feel for a large parts of the game for me that York were the better side.
mm,
And were unlucky to not have scored more, because I didn't. And I'm wanting to talk about York first. We could talk about Cavalry, of course, and the fast starts that they had. But before we get to Carmargo's double, York, for me, the way that they settled into the match after conceding, early on in both halves, their response was really strong. I thought, especially in the first half. Adonizer Reed played out of his skin
yeah.
in this one, and arguably should have had a goal if it wasn't for last-ditch defending from it was
Montgomery.
Kobsa and Montgomery.
Montgomery is sliding and off the line and yeah.
Kobsa with a headed clearance as well. If it wasn't for those two last-ditch defending and some good saves also from Carducci,
Hmm.
York should have, I think, in my eyes, led this match and arguably come away from the 3 points. I really did like how they played for the most part. Obviously, as the second half went on, they started to throw more players forward. They started to be more open towards the back, and Cavalry started to get more chances, and probably should have scored more as well themselves. I think of Ali Musi having that kind of breakaway. Um, Even nevertheless, it's another case of York playing well but not getting
Hmm.
the results. And it's not even, I've mentioned before that sometimes you need a little bit more pragmatism. I don't even think that was the issue today. I think it was just unlucky that they didn't score really, really solid saves and last ditch tackles and
Yeah.
clearances from Cavalry. And then Cavalry kind of just doing what they do best in terms of creating chances almost out of nothing against the run of
Hmm.
play and hitting hard. And that's the thing. If you go against Cavalry, if you're not set up in the first 5 minutes, they run at you. Just
Mm.
the game. They're very physical. I mean, it's a Tommy Wilden Jr. side. They're going to be very physical. They're going to get at you. They're going to press. They're going to try to destabilize you as quickly as possible, not let you settle. And that's what happened. But I think aside from the bad starts at either half, York played a really good game, and unfortunate that, for me, in my opinion, unfortunate that they didn't get something from it by the end.
Yeah, it just seemed frustrating for them. They were creating chances, like you say, but for like the difference, it seems like now is that if those exact ways were playing out and it was a Cavalry player, they've got the momentum, they would have scored. Like, it's just they're in that role at the moment where when they get those chances and they get the right chances, they're going to take them. And York, unfortunately, are in that moment where it's just not quite going for them, and their forwards aren't well. Altobelli's been getting a good amount of goals, but for Ferrin and Reid especially, there's a lot of industry. Ferrin got the goal late on, which was great for him, to make it 2-1, but the two of them are working so hard but not quite getting that much out of it at the moment for those two. So I think it's just one of those things where, like, hopefully for them, once they go for Ferrin, now he's got that goal, maybe he could push on and go on a bit of a run, and if Reid can be able to take his chance. But they've I think Eustachio is just going to be irritated by the fact that they've taken 5 minutes in each half to get started, whereas Cavalry have come out and just from the whistle.
Yeah, and I do look at the way that Cavalry sort of set themselves up, and you could see that the midfield was completely different for them because they were missing a bunch of players to injury and a bunch of players to or a few players to international duty. So they had Sergio Camargo, in a more defensive duty, which is funny because he went out and scored 2 goals. Yeah. But in the double pivot with Piepgras, and then you had Maël Henry, who we both are quite high on, playing as a 10 with Jay Herdman playing on the left. So it was a bit of a change in midfield, and that allowed, I guess, York to be able to find a little bit more spaces and gaps, because this is not the usual midfield that they have. Sergio Camargo isn't necessarily used to playing as a defensive player, so he's going to leave a couple of spaces and a couple of gaps for York to play. But what I really was impressed by was the fact that the double pivot, as well as the 2 center backs, Montgomery and Kabsa, literally just took Altobelli out of the game. They recognized that he was the most dangerous player and stopped almost all service to him. I think he had less than 30 touches in the match. And when he is obviously the danger man, he's the most on-form striker in the league, that has to be your number 1 target as a defense. And they did that. And York United, despite growing into the games, they really struggled to score these chances because their main danger man, their bagsman in Altobelli, wasn't there to put them away. If you put Altobelli in the chances that Adonijah Reid and who's the one that shot that Kalpsa cleared.
I forget now who said they had the dig.
I think it was Ferrari, maybe that had it.
Ferrari,
yeah. Whoever it was, had Altobelli been in those positions, I do think that it might have been different. And the fact that they nullified Altobelli altogether, is a big reason why they were able to go on and score. And as much as York started to get into the game, second half, Cavalry just sat back and defended and soaked up pressure. And I don't think York had a shot in the last 20 minutes, 25 minutes of the match.
Yeah, once they get going, they're the best at holding on to a lead, aren't they? Like, once they're settled and comfortable, and it was really nice to see Eric Kopsa back and playing well. That was because I've been really keen on Levi Lang. I thought he's been a great addition. And Kopsa obviously gets back in this week, and really performed well with Montgomery, like you said.
Yeah, I think both of them just have really stepped into that role. It's it's a tough ask for them to be as good together as, Klomp was when Cavalry had him. But they have made a lot of progress as the center back pairing for Cavalry, and to be able to, step up as much as they have together and have really good communication shows that Cavalry have been able to sort of replace Klomp in the aggregate between Kobsa and Montgomery. And yeah, the way that they defended was really impressive. And again, for me, the most important thing was can you nullify Altobelli? Can you keep him to the minimal? And they did that. And I don't think he had many chances, if at all. And they were able to go and instead get their goals. And I think maybe now we should transition to talk about Sergio Camargo, because like we mentioned, he was playing defensively, but he goes on and scores 2 goals. The first one inside 3 minutes, was it? And the second one in the 50th minute, inside 5 minutes of the second half. I mean, we both have a lot of time for Sergio Camargo. He's a proper day one Cavalry. He has these kind of moments or runs of games where he pops up and he just is one of the best players on the pitch. I remember towards the end of last season, he was, a contender for potentially, a player of the season. That's how well he was in form. And he just sometimes has these games where it really is just that he doesn't stop running. He doesn't stop working. And the perfect example of that, I think, is the second goal. The ball is bouncing around the box. Looking back on the replay, he's not even in the picture when that ball goes in. But he's there when the ball bounces around and bounces out, and he's just charging into the box. He smells an opportunity, he gets there, it pops up perfectly for him. He has quick reaction because he had a half second to see the ball bounce. Puts it in the back of the net. I mean, that's class, and that's what Sergio Camargo is for CPL. He's a class player, and he demonstrated that in this match.
Yeah, this was one of those games where you see these flair sort of attacking midfielders who start to they've pressed and they've worked hard, but as time catches up with them, they eventually take a few steps back and just become that deep line playmaker, and they like to have the game in front of them. And this was sort of Sergio Camargo's sort of little trial of this is what it'll be like once I can't play in those the more advanced positions, and I can take my little step back into the defensive midfield and spray the ball around and have the game in front of me and space in front. I'm not trying to find all these little pockets. It's all there, and I think that was quite fun to see. And he's obviously he's got the quality too, and it looked like he took to it really well.
Yeah, he did. And again, the fact that he's playing in I guess not a foreign position, but in a more defensive position as a more attacking player. I mean, he's sort of diminutive. He does fight, but he's not big and stocky like Charlie Trafford was before he retired. And he's able to perform well in that position. I mean, obviously he scored both goals, but defensively, he was there in terms of making some clearances, some interceptions, some recoveries. He's just he's hard working. He just does everything that he can, all the right things in whatever position they throw him in. And I mean, there's not much more I think you can ask of him, especially since Tommy Wilden Jr. has, in the process between last season and this season, lost a lot of players. It's not just Dan Klomp as well, but it's also, we haven't seen Charlie Trafford, like I mentioned, retired. Diego Gutierrez hasn't made an appearance in the CPL this season. And so to have him be an option that Tommy can be like, all right, I'm going to put you in defensive midfield because I know you can do a job, and not only do a job, but pop up and get a goal even from a further position back. I mean, I think that'll be worth his weight in gold for Tommy to be able to have a player like that in Camargo. And yeah, I love seeing Camargo have these kind of games because it allows people to be able to give him his flowers. Because I just think, he's a class act for Cavalry in the midfield. But now I think we're going to move on to talk about the big one.
Yeah.
The Valour against Vancouver. Now, this was actually a new, or not a new, another sort of new initiative, another instance of the initiative, which is the school day match. We saw how successful it was for Forge when they had that in Hamilton, record-breaking appearance number. I think for the circumstances, for the context, it wasn't another record-breaking number for Valour. But given that Valour struggles to get a decent amount of people out to regular games, I mean, their attendance numbers are one of the lowest with
in
Vancouver.
Like, stadium.
Yeah. And it looks worse when you compare to Vancouver or even York. I know York's Lions Stadium is obviously, I think, a bit bigger than Willoughby, or at least it seems that way. It doesn't look as bad as Valour because they play in the same stadium as the Blue Bombers, the CFL team. So the fact that they still got, I think it was 11,000 people out to a game. I mean, that's incredible for them, and obviously so many kids out there, and it must have been a really interesting experience for them because Winnipeg is more, I mean, Canada as a whole is more of a hockey country, but especially when you go towards the interior kind of places, it's way more of hockey than it is other sports because of the climate that they're in. So it must have been a cool experience for them to go to see a soccer game when they're probably used to hockey games. And it must have been a bit familiar when they started to see fights break out. In the match. It was a pretty lively match, and hey, for retention, for making future fans, I mean, it's gonna be hard to deliver that every match, but for the kind of big match in front of these thousands of kids, there's not much more you can ask for in terms of a spectacle and the experience. Because wow, that was a very, very entertaining game, to say the least, for the kids in the stadium.
They got a bit of everything, didn't they? We'll talk about the red cards soon, but shots from all over the place, chances missed. Like great saves. There's a bit of everything for them. So this was definitely they put on a show for them.
Exactly. And I mean, let's talk about the red cards first, because that's the thing that everyone has been talking about, everybody wants to talk about, is the red cards. Because there is a sequence of events that occurred in the match, and it started all rather, I guess, not innocently, but it started kind of inconspicuously. This incident that happened right before halftime. Basically, it was David Norman Jr. getting pulled down by, was it Figueiredo that he got pulled down by in the box? Or I forget, or not in the box, sorry, in the center midfield.
Oh, it was Fashionary was the one that was.
It was Fashionary.
Yeah, because he's got the sending off for the apparent kicking out, which, I mean, the whole thing for me was just terribly managed.
Exactly.
But it was a real blip on the refereeing, the referee review at the end of this. Because Fashionary looks irritated, but he doesn't kick out. Like, it looks like he wants to. Do you know? Like you want to do that kick, but you don't really move it. There was no point did he swing out, and then it all goes. Then it all sparks off to a degree, and Kunle Luke gets sent off for basically stopping everyone fighting. I don't know what. I'm watching it back because I'm like, oh, maybe he shoved some of the things. I watch it back a few times. Just like he literally stands over his player and just holds his arms out, saying, "Go away," and then he gets pulled towards one player as well. So neither of them, in my mind, should have got sent off. It just seemed like a really overblown reaction to nothing. The only person who really properly shoved someone to the ground was Antonoglu, who got nothing. That was completely ignored. He came running in and just threw someone on the floor and then went for someone else. And the two players get sent off for doing very little.
It was ridiculous. I mean, I remember I was out, but I had the game on my phone and I was watching this, and I was just like, I had to rewind it so many times because I was genuinely, I think I sat in like a coffee shop because I wanted to stop and have a drink while I was watching it. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing in that. There are, you know what, actually, there are red card defenses in that brawl, but none of them
for those two
were from Kunle Luke or from Facineri. I think it was Diogo Resurrexao that like pushed Matteo Campagna's face, and Matteo Campagna went to the floor.
Oh yeah,
unpunished.
Yeah.
Right. Meanwhile, Kunle Luke is elite. They're crowding around David Norman, the Valour players. Kunle Luke is just pushing them away to give them space. Like, and it's not like a shove. It's like it's a push, trying to be peacekeeper, and he gets a red card. And Facineri barely a kick out. Yeah. I feel like that's not really anything. He didn't make any contact. He should get a yellow card for the pullback on David Norman. David Norman tries to have a little tough, like a little once he gets back up and everything, to like kick out as well. Like his arm, I think his arm when he got spun by the pulling of the shirt, his arm went out. Yellow card there. But to give red cards for both of those offenses it's just ridiculous. And unfortunately, like we talk about the refereeing, there are, I guess you can call them serial offenders when it comes to refereeing. And Yusri Rudolph is one that has consistently had these contentious moments, and he really struggles to keep things under control. It was also the referee that Vancouver Whitecaps had when they faced Valour, and there was a lot of controversy there as well. So it just feels like when things get heated, the man loses control. And I think it's because he doesn't set a good precedent beforehand. And then when it blows up in his face, then he just starts dishing out to try to, I guess, get a semblance of control back, saying, hey, if you're going to do something that I don't think is right, here's a red card, here's a red card, here's a red card. Instead of taking a second to kind of step back and be like, okay, what happened? Let me talk to my ARs. No,
well, that's the problem. I think that was the biggest problem of it, because you can say, okay, when something sparks off like that and it's a big crowd, like, okay, it can be very hard for one referee who's chasing, like, who's not stood right next to him at that moment, to watch all of it and manage all of it. But it happened right in front of the fourth official. Like, it was right in front of him. So he has another set of eyes on the side of the pitch watching it, who hasn't helped, it seems, or they've agreed on what they've gone with between them. But you heard Phil DeSantos on the broadcast. The microphones are so close. He's just like, you've sent the wrong players off.
Yeah.
Like, just give that.
That's genuinely what it felt like, that he sent the wrong players off. And when you're in those moments there, obviously it's high tension. It's like there's a lot of pressure on the referee. I'm not saying that it's easy, but as the referee, you need to take a moment to just relax and to kind of, really get a handle on what just occurred. Because it didn't feel like that. It just felt like he was just like flustered and said, okay, I know, I saw you pushing people around. You're the one that kicked out. Here's a red. Here's a red. Not really getting the greater context of the situation. And it was really unfortunate because up until that point, I thought that, both teams were doing well, but like Vancouver FC had a really strong start in this match. A really, really good start. Emmerich Fotzing, who we'll talk about in a little bit, got that early goal. Then later, Valour started to get more into it. They got their own goal in the 44th minute through Twardek, and it was ramping up to actually be a really good competitive game. And then that happens, 2 red cards, and at least it's equal. Both teams go to 10. But then it kind of takes a little bit more of the competitive spirit out of it, because now both teams are having to scramble. How can they fix it? How can they try to make the best of it? In the end, Valour was the team that made the best of it. The way that they adjusted, they were able to really expose Vancouver in the wide areas. And the sad thing for Vancouver is that, getting red card to a player in general is always going to be a detriment. But one of their most important players in the style of play that they love to play, Kunle Dadaluke, that we've talked about before, that he's vital to the team, and when they don't have him, their attack looks stunted. Got the red card. Meanwhile, Facineri, who's a good center back for Valour, is replaceable. You can put somebody else back there. I think, putting Ohin or somebody like that, a more defensive midfielder there. He's not as integral to the way that Valour like to play as Dadaluke is to Vancouver. And I think in the second half, that's what really came to light, is that without Dadaluke, Vancouver weren't really offering all that much, and Valour were able to take advantage of that, especially since it was a wide player, a wide defender in Dadaluke, the right back, that got sent off, and they were able to expose those wide areas.
Yeah, I mean, when you go down to 10 on that pitch, it gets even bigger, and Valour's wing play is the best part of their game. Like, it's not the finishing. It's so player, like, having those two sort of fullbacks and wingers working so well together, they're able to switch the play so well. They've got Figueiredo in the middle who can just spray the ball around. There's Urasal as well. You've got players who can move the ball from wing to wing. And it just moves Vancouver too much. They couldn't cope with it when the space opened up more. Whereas when Vancouver tried to get forward, Valour were able to just sit back. They didn't have that wide option really. There were basically three centre forwards started the game, and it was very narrow compared. And then you take Dadaluke out of that, then it's just this makes it very difficult for them. It makes what could be a huge pitch. They're playing in the very, very narrow part of it. So it really did open up for Valour, and they dealt with it so much better. They got more of the chances. I mean, we've got 15 shots, 8 on target. The amount of cutbacks that were just off a player like Kean Williams and things like that, they really should have scored more than 3 goals. They really made so many opportunities and so many chances that should have been taken. That, I mean, Sean Handel.
Oh man.
Oh, Sean Handel.
Oh god.
It's one of those ones where I think he's so desperate to get one over on them, and he just wants to score a few goals past Vancouver after his exit, and it's not going to happen.
It really, he got some curse. I don't know what he did, but he got some curse on them, because he had 3 chances to score in this match. 3 brilliant chances to score.
Luckily,
the first one
took one of them.
Yeah, exactly. The first one that he whiffed, and Twardek was there to get the second. The penalty, that was a terrible penalty. It was so bad that Callum Irving was able to dive and just hold on to the ball, not even need to bury it wide. And then the tap-in, the Twardek literally said, "Here, let me try to give it to you again. Here's an absolute tap-in, 3 yards out. You can't miss it." And he just whiffs again. He can't get his feet sorted. It's just ridiculous. And there wouldn't have been a better opportunity for him. Vancouver were struggling. They were still reeling from the send-off. Their savior in Callum Irving wasn't having the best of games. Obviously saved his penalty, but spilled on a number of times. You could see that he wasn't at his A game in this match, and could have given goals away. He's not always making mistakes. He has a game or two in a season where
I'll give him credit though. Like, Valour take a lot of shots from outside the box, so they are improving them, and they get a lot of swerve on them. Figueiredo especially, can knuckleball, just goes everywhere, and I think just getting behind it sometimes is all you can do. I mean, the way the free kick just hit the post, Callum Irving just like, well, I'm not going to get. Oh, that's lucky.
Yeah.
No, I'll give him a bit of credit. I thought, like some of those chances that he did spill were the ball was moving so much.
Yeah, I do feel like the shots that he was facing were difficult ones. But still, I think for Sean Handel, you're not going to get many better opportunities to score against your your old team and put one over on them, and the fact that he could have had a hat trick. He should have had a hat trick.
Should have had a hat trick, yeah.
In this match is just ridiculous. But there was a lot of good performances, obviously, from Valour. Your boy, Keane Williams, he's come back and he's looked more of the Keane Williams that we were raving on about, 2 seasons ago, how important he was for Valour.
Injury, isn't it? So,
exactly, and he looks like he hasn't missed any time at all in the way that he played.
Yeah, it's improving because I think he started the first game of the season and really looked off it. And which you're going to, the length of time he'd been off to then come back. And yeah, it just looked like he was, really getting back into it again. And having him play at that wing, just stay as wide as you can, get chalk on your boots sort of winger, as they say, and they just cut in at the last minute and you've got that space. Yeah, it's really good to see. And then gets replaced. I think it was a like for Jordan Ferreira, wasn't it? Who then goes and just does the exact same thing. When you've got players, when they're encouraging them to actually just run at the fullback, they're just looking really good. And it's just the finishing that's the issue from there. I can't remember who was on comms on One Soccer, but I think they were saying interviewing Phil dos Santos before, saying well, I've got 3 strikers and I'm waiting for one of them to take the spot, but none of them want it.
I mean, that's genuinely it. And I mean, Valour have shown in the last 3-4 weeks that they are willing to step up and give better performances than they have tend to do in the last 12 to 18 months. I feel like the last few games, even if the ones that they haven't won, have still shown that they are, Phil dos Santos is pushing them to try to get to another level, and this today really showed that. But when you can't get the ball into the back of the net, you don't have that much of a defense. I can't defend you anymore if you can't get the ball into the back of the net, both for Phil dos Santos and his team, but Sean Hondo in general, because we talked about it when he first signed for Valour at the beginning of last season. He was supposed to be the big number 9 for them.
Yeah.
And I think he has single-digit goals still for Valour in his second stint. I think he has, I think he has less than 10 goals in 2 seasons for Valour so far. Well, season and a half or season and a quarter, whatever, including this season. You just need a bit more because you do have talent. We talk about Temi, we talk about Faria. He actually, popped up, scored a goal. Really good near post finish for the 3-1 there on the counterattack. Obviously, Vancouver throwing everything forward. It was a bit easier for them, but still, from that, from that angle, that kind of finish, really, really solid. But you need somebody else at the striker to really be able to push and take it to another level. You need a Julian Altobelli-esque kind of player. And I think if you have that, somebody that, especially if you got somebody that can get on the end of crosses from Alarcon and obviously Temi, you have a system that can benefit from that and you can start to achieve results. It's just when you have Sean Hondo missing a hat trick of chances, golden opportunities. It's tough. But hey, at least it added to the drama for the kids of these missed opportunities. But yeah, one last player I want to talk about before we move on to the last game is Emmerich Fotzing, because we've been talking about him in the last few weeks because he's been stepping up, but he's another player that's playing beyond his years. We talked about Massunda. It's the same thing with Fotzing, and he's 2 years younger than Massunda. He's still only 17. But the acrobatic finish on this one, the way that he kind of with the outside of his boot floated it over the keeper into the back of the net off the little chip cross from NU. It shows the confidence that the kid has. And it's not even, just the goal. It's whenever he's on the ball, he's so hardworking, he's tidy, he's physical, because for a 17-year-old, he's a big boy. And so he knows how to use it. And he's a little clumsy. He's obviously still a little raw. He has maybe a mistake or two in him. The fact that he's 17 and performing as well as he is, he's arguably the best player on the team for them right now and has been for the last few weeks. I mean, that's just incredible. And it goes to show, maybe Vancouver FC, they might not be great at a lot of things, but maybe young talent recognition and young talent development is just their thing. How sustainable that is, I don't know. I guess if they get one class player, like young player, develop him and sell him, and at the end of the season for like 300,000, 400,000, that might cover the books. But it's credible that they've done it again, and every season they've had a young 16, 17-year-old kid pop up and have an impressive season. You had Tahid in 2023, you had Grady McDonald in 24, and now 25 you have Emmerich Fotzen. And it's just, I'm just, every time I see this kid play, I'm just so surprised that he's only 17 and yet he's going toe-to-toe with players 10 years his senior and winning some of them. That's incredible.
Yeah, physically, he's a full-grown adult, and you say maybe he's had a bit of a growth spurt, the way it can be a little bit awkward at times, but it's it's exciting when you see these young players. I've got so excited about Massunda earlier, and thought saying the same, because we were looking at this team as it was built at the beginning of the year, going, well, a lot of these young players are going to have to play. Are they anywhere near ready? And yes, he's still got lots to learn football, but he's quick. He moves around well. You can see he's learning a lot and he's improving game on game. It's, really exciting.
Yeah, I think he is another one to watch as the season goes on. Another one that, like Massunda, if they continue in this form, I'd be surprised if they stay on and stay in the CPL past this season. But yeah, he's been one of the brightest spots for Vancouver, and again, what hasn't been the best of times for them in the league. For you, I guess, looking at how Vancouver played, I know you had your thoughts about them at the very beginning of the season, but do you see the kind of progression, the trajectory that they're starting to really challenge more and be able to maybe have a chance to get into that 5th position?
I mean, they are better than they were at the opening few games of the season, but I'm seeing, watching this game, I did feel like Valour were the better team even before the sendings off. I thought they were creating much more chances. Vancouver was still creating some. I think both teams, though, they've got so many mistakes in their defenses. NU was the goal that was from the corner was such weak defending, and there's moments in both teams where I'm still not. I can't see I can see both of them working well and getting some results here and there, but I can see them being blown away by teams at the same time, because they'll capitalize on their mistakes. There's still a long way to go for both of them. It's just too much is relied upon from Callum Irving for defensively for Vancouver, and I think I wasn't particularly excited about the front three that they played. Have got good players, but I just don't think as a three they're right. They needed someone else in there to bring something different and have rotations. So there's still bits where I think both teams are still learning, but definitely improvements from the beginning of the
year. Yeah, you can't. I don't think you can get much worse than what they were at the beginning. But I think they need to stop relying on Fotzing, because he's been fantastic the last few matches. But again, he's just a 17-year-old kid, and unless your name's Lamine Yamal, relying on a 17-year-old kid is probably not a great recipe for success. So they need the players around them. These international players that they brought in, like Baptiste and Pate, the striker, to kind of step in and be able to kind of change the game a bit, to kind of impact the game a bit more. Will, I think, work really well for them. And then I think it was Irving after the game said, like, we need Ervatsin to be more of a complementary player rather than the star player that we have to rely on. We need to step up around them. And I think that's exactly what Vancouver need to do to be able to get some points on the board and try to catch up on what is already looking like a season where they might not get playoff football once again for the third season in a row. But now let's finish up with the last game of the match day, and that was Pacific against Ottawa. Now, usually Ottawa, when we talk about Ottawa, they love to score goals. They love to score goals. They don't even mind conceding a bunch.
Just one goal.
But just this one goal, one little goal, and it came from a penalty. Not even an open play goal for Ottawa, and I gotta say I was surprised by how. How kind of dull this game was. There was a little bit, obviously, of excitement. There was some good attacks. Max Anchor, I think, had a good, solid match for Pacific between the sticks. He made some important saves and closing down to deny Ottawa chances. But it was just a little bit sloppy, I think, from Ottawa in the attack. They relied on transitional attacks a lot.
Yeah. Which was weird considering they had more possession.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't feel like they really took the game by the scruff of the neck and brought it to Pacific. Maybe wary that Pacific are good defensively and are at home, and the gaps that they can, leave behind. Maybe it was David Mejia being like, I don't want to concede, so let's not be, as reckless going forward. Just swashbuckling. Let's be a little bit more reserved. Let's control it a bit and try to wait until they make mistakes to go and attack and score a bunch of goals. Maybe it was a kind of a change of strategy to kind of, take away all of the goals conceded. And it worked to a degree. They kept a clean sheet away from home against Pacific. But it did feel like this wasn't the same Ottawa that we had been seeing in the last few weeks since the season started. In terms of the free-flowing attack, the danger, like everything coming together. Sam Salter, Balou Tabla, David Rodriguez being the main focal point. It just kind of felt, a little bit more reserved and sloppy. I think, David Rodriguez should have scored. Sam Salter should have scored. They had some good opportunities, but they weren't unable to put them away and had to rely on a penalty to get the win. I think it was, it's a show of a champion in my eyes that if you don't play the best game, you can still grind out a win. So I think they'll be happy with that, but definitely not the finest performance from Ottawa that we've seen this season.
No, shades of Cargo, isn't it? It was a strange one because they just didn't. When they had the ball in possession and had chances and Pacific got back, they just weren't really sure how to break them down at all. And that's got to be kind of frustrating for them. But Pacific are pretty stubborn defense. They as much as we can discuss their abilities at the other end of the pitch and their failures up there, and defensively they keep going. Like they had one of the best defenses last year for their position where they were in the league, and this year again they're not conceding many goals. So it's sort of forced Ottawa, even despite how good they've been attacking, it's forced them to just rely on transitional moments again.
Yeah. And when you look at the way that they had been attacking before, and David Rodriguez, how important he's been, even he wasn't, at his tip-top best, which understandable. You can't always be at your tip-top best for 28 games in the season.
I don't know if the pitch makes that much of a difference because it's quite narrow, isn't it? It's the smallest pitch. So trying to find space is harder, I guess, compared to what they get back over in Ottawa.
Yeah, potentially. And I think I did see him, like, he likes to go wide and then cut in, but I feel like because maybe of the width not being as much there, he had to just try to go centrally from the off and maybe struggle to get out in those spaces. But he still was dangerous, and he still was a player that's he's still a quality player. But yeah, I just felt like they were a little bit more reserved in this one, but they were able to get it. The win. Let's talk about the penalties and the self or penalty and penalty shouts themselves, because there was two contentious moments. One was a penalty that was given, which I'm trying to remember here.
It looks like he's stood on Rodriguez's foot. It's really hard because I'm watching it on a laptop, so with the cameras look perfect, so perfect quality. But it looks like he just stepped on his foot, and Rodriguez has gone down very quick. But it looks like, Mukambini comes back and he's like, I didn't touch him, but there wasn't too many complaints from everyone else around.
Yeah, exactly. Looking back on it, it did seem like it was a penalty. I mean, not too much. It wasn't egregious as some other ones that we've seen, but it did seem like it was a penalty. And up stepped Balou Tabla and really coolly dispatched it.
Yeah.
I think gave Max Anninger the eyes. Max Anninger went the wrong way and then just dispatched on the right side. I don't think there could be too much complaints about that one, but where the complaints can come is using that to compare to the penalty shot the Pacific had later in the match, in which it was Bustos and Tier Walker. Bustos was running through after a nice little back heel from, I think it was Salter, or was it Rodriguez that did the little back heel there? Or sorry, not Salter, Rodriguez, what am I saying?
That's trying to think.
Montejano or De Pauli, was it?
I can't remember. Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
Got my attackers mixed up there. But Bustos got on the end of a neat little back heel and was going, running beside Tier Walker. And Tier Walker is like a head and a half taller than Bustos, and used what seemed to be his shoulder to kind of push Bustos aside, and a bit of shoulder, a bit of arm to push Bustos to the ground. Bustos did go to the ground in my eyes a little easily. But the referee said no penalty, and the crowd was in uproar for the lack of a penalty called in that. Jordan Wilson, who was on comms for that match, agreed in saying that it was a shoulder to shoulder and that it wasn't a penalty. But I did feel like there was a bit of arm in it, and so I'm curious to say what you think. If you think that was more arm than shoulder and therefore a penalty, or if it was clean.
Yeah, no, I mean, Jordan Wilson's really showing he was a defensive player because Tim Walker's behind him. He's chasing back. It can't be it's not shoulder to shoulder, because even during the commentary, he's like, yeah, he's shoulder to shoulder. I mean, the arm goes out and he just pushes him with his left hand and pushes him down. Yeah, it's not a big push, and maybe the way Bustos has gone down has made the ref go, no, he's thrown himself down. But I think it was a push and it deserved a penalty, and I can completely sympathise with the fans, and if James Merriman was probably quite pissed off with it as well.
Yeah, I can imagine that he was probably fuming after the match, but you can't really. I feel like it would be disingenuous if you pin the loss on the lack of a penalty call there, because Pacific should have done better in this match. You look at the Atletico Ottawa back line. Now, I didn't notice this until after the match, but you look at the Atletico Ottawa back line. They have a 21-year-old, a 21-year-old, and a 20-year-old in their back three. Loic Cloutier, Noah Batney, and Tier Walker. Right? In terms of back three, that's the youngest back three you're probably going to see in the CPL this season. Huge gamble, I guess. Or maybe not gamble, huge investment. Like an investment call from Diego Mejia to give these three, 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, young men, the job of, hey, you're my back three, you're locking it down. We're going to be coming up against, some really good players like, Bustos. And I'm going to need you guys to get me a clean sheet. And they did. Fantastic from them to be able to do that. But if you are, especially like Cloutier, I was really impressed by him and the way that he was able to play. But from a Pacific point of view, you look at that back three and you say, these are inexperienced players. I mean, yeah, they've played a decent amount of CPL football, especially Abadne and Walker, but they're still young. They're still learning. They're still growing. There's still areas of improvement for them. You're gonna want to target that, and when you have players like Sean Young, Caden Chung, Marco Bustos, especially on their right side, that's the more attacking of the two sides. You want them to get at them more. You want them to create trouble. But it didn't really feel like Pacific did that at all. It kind of felt like they walked right into Ottawa's hands. And I don't know if they were prepared for Ottawa to be a bit more daring and then to leave space in behind. But it just felt very uninspired from Pacific in the attack.
Yeah, it just has been, hasn't it? It's a problem. I mean, I've not been particularly excited by De Pauli, who played the more attacking midfield role in this one. And the players they lost. I mean, Stephen Yates isn't like an out-and-out attacking midfielder, but last year he was much better than what the players have been doing this year, coming from the centre of midfield and trying to get involved in attacks. Just Montejano was a young player who's had a great start, like a little bit of a start, but was struggling to really get into games, and there's just nothing really coming from Josh Hurd's running at all. Like he's running around a lot, but there's not too much going for it. Everything is just relying on Bustos, and that's the issue. I think they've got to start looking at. I know they lost Krat to injury, but yeah, there's got to be some questions about how they're doing. We'll have a proper rethink about what is our recruitment process at the moment, because all those attacking players to support a striker. I mean, we're not seeing much from Aidan Daniels at all so far this season. We'll see what Tuali does, but otherwise, it's just they've got some hard-working players that will go into the defence and into the field, but going forward, it's just they haven't hit on their signings.
Yeah, and Montejano in this one. He's 23, like I talked about. That nice little moment of scoring the goal, but still hasn't shown me. And he played 87 minutes in this one. He had one shot. That's I'm sorry, you gotta do more for me there. You got and it's not all his fault. He needs better. It's about the service of the system as well. But it's just the lack of a focal point up front that really makes it tough for Pacific to look dangerous. Like when you have Marco Bustos, he's always going to be someone that can create something. But if you have no one there to finish it, then there's not really much he can do beyond trying to go and do it all himself.
Yeah.
And at 29 years old, you're not like there's these youngster that's an insane amount of energy. He still does a lot of work. Obviously, I'm not saying that he's walking around like Messi, but he's able to do more. But to ask him to do everything seems like a lot. And yeah, just Pacific for me. I mean, it's the history of Pacific.
Yeah,
and just toothless in attack since 2020, since the end of 2021. Just struggled to score goals, and I don't know if that's going to change. I really am worried about how that's going to impact, their season, because right now 2 wins, 2 draws, 6 losses in 10 matches is rough.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to get out of this hole that they're in right now. But on that cheerful note, we're going to end off this match week recap for this week. Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast episode. Make sure to follow us once again on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, so you can give us your thoughts on this week's episode. We got some good responses to maybe a little bit of a different format, and when we did a little catch-up episode, we're going to try to be incorporating that alongside the sort of match week recap to give you a bit more of a rounder, holistic episode. That way, if you can't catch it right away, you can still listen to it for some more evergreen points that we might be talking about, and making a better listen experience for you all. Thank you again for all your support and your suggestions and your comments. We do listen to them and read them, and we'll try to implement that in the weeks to come. But until next time, I'm Felipe Ordejo.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And this has been Coast to Coast FC, signing out.